A perfect city grid appears in the middle of a barren valley, 4,500 years ago. This video explores 25 ancient city plans that were completely designed before construction ever began. By the end, you will see these places not as ruins, but as masterpieces of premeditated genius that challenge our view of history itself. We will cross continents and millennia to uncover how societies without modern tools executed urban blueprints with impossible precision. What hidden knowledge guided their hands, and what can these silent stone maps tell us about their world? What does it say about us that we are still unraveling their secrets today? The first city on our journey is a place of profound silence and order. Mohenjo-Daro, in what is now Pakistan, is a city built of baked brick that has stood for more than 4,500 years. Its streets are not the winding, organic paths of a village that grew over time. Instead, they are laid out in a near-perfect grid, a geometric pattern of main avenues and smaller lanes that intersect at precise right angles. This is not an accident of history. It is the work of a society that began with a plan. From the very first brick placed, the entire urban layout was conceived. The builders used standardized bricks, all the same ratio, which meant every wall, every well, every house could be constructed from identical, interchangeable units. This speaks of a centralized authority, a governing vision that could enforce such uniformity across a vast, bustling metropolis. But the genius of Mohenjo-Daro's plan goes far beyond straight streets. Walk those grids today, and you will see the true sophistication beneath your feet. The city possessed one of the world's first comprehensive drainage systems. Every house had a bathroom that connected to a network of covered sewers running beneath the lanes, with regular manholes for maintenance. Waste was channeled away from living spaces, a revolutionary concept for public health in the ancient world. Archaeologist Jonathan Mark Kenoyer describes this as conscious urban planning, a design focused deliberately on hygiene and social order. The city was even divided into distinct areas: a raised citadel for civic and perhaps ceremonial buildings, and a lower city with orderly residential blocks. This separation of function is another hallmark of a premeditated blueprint. How did they maintain this flawless consistency for centuries, through generations of builders and residents? The answer lies in the plan itself. The grid was the law. It dictated where everything would go, from the grandest bathhouse to the smallest home. It ensured that even as the city lived and breathed, its fundamental structure remained unchanged, a masterpiece of foresight etched into the very earth of the Indus Valley. This planned harmony sets a powerful precedent, a clear signal that our story of ancient urban design begins not with chaos, but with a ruler and a vision. That same principle of a plan as law traveled across oceans and found expression on an even more monumental scale. In the highlands of central Mexico, a city was built not just for people, but for the cosmos itself. Teotihuacan, to walk its central artery, the Avenue of the Dead, is to feel dwarfed by intention. This is not a path that simply emerged, it is a baseline, a foundational axis drawn across the landscape with breathtaking audacity. For nearly 2.5 miles, this immense avenue cuts a perfectly straight line through the heart of the city, flanked by the staggering masses of the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. The entire urban grid is locked to this orientation, a rigid geometric plan imposed upon the valley floor. But the alignment is not arbitrary. Archaeologists like Saburo Sugiyama have shown that the city's main axis points precisely to the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster on the horizon. This is not urban planning in a modern sense, it is sacred cartography. Teotihuacan was designed as a cosmogram, a physical map of the universe meant to harmonize human activity with celestial order. Every street, every plaza, every towering structure was placed according to this grand cosmic blueprint, The staggering part is the timeline of its execution. This was not a project completed in a single lifetime. Construction unfolded over centuries in distinct phases, yet each new generation of builders adhered religiously to the original master plan laid down by their ancestors. The Pyramid of the Sun, for instance, was built in stages, each new layer carefully enveloping the last while maintaining the precise orientation and proportions dictated from the beginning. This speaks of a cultural memory and a shared vision so powerful it could guide a society for hundreds of years. The design served a dual purpose. Ceremonially, it transformed the entire city into a stage for ritual, where processions down the Avenue of the Dead mirrored the journey of celestial bodies. Practically, this rigid grid allowed for astonishing urban management, organizing housing, workshops, and trade for a population that may have reached 100,000. What cosmic principles, what understanding of time and space were they trying to cement into the earth? Teotihuacan's silent, geometric perfection suggests a civilization that thought not in years, but in millennia, building a permanent home for their gods and a testament to their vision that would outlast them by ages. The leap from cosmic alignment to imperial ambition is a short one in our story. From the sacred valley of Teotihuacan, we travel to the windswept coast of the Mediterranean, to a city born not from centuries of ritual, but from the singular will of a conqueror and the chalk in his architect's hand. The year is 331 before the Common Era. Alexander the Great stands on a strip of land between the sea and a lake, and he sees not sand but potential. With him is his architect, Dinocrates. According to the historian Plutarch, Dinocrates did not present Alexander with parchment or clay models. Instead, he took barley meal and, right there on the beach, traced the magnificent outline of the future city directly onto the ground. This was more than a rough sketch. It was a symbolic act, using the meal meant for sacrifice to map the limits of a metropolis, a gesture seeking divine approval for a human blueprint. Alexander approved, and the city of Alexandria was willed into existence with that single, sweeping motion. This was the ultimate pre-construction plan. Every element was decided in advance. Dinocrates employed the Hippodamian grid system, named for the planner Hippodamus of Miletus, which organized the city into a strict lattice of wide, parallel streets called platae, intersecting at perfect right angles with smaller lanes. This created uniform, easily navigable city blocks, but the genius of Alexandria's plan was in its zoning. Distinct districts were designated from the start, one for the Greek colonists, another for the Egyptian populace, and others for specific functions like trade and industry. This was a deliberate design for cultural amalgamation, a planned society meant to facilitate not just order, but the blending of knowledge and tradition. Most famously, the plan reserved prime, pre-plotted locations for the city's future icons. The site for the pharaohs, the lighthouse that would become one of the seven wonders, was chosen for its visibility to ships. The location for the Mausoleum and its great library was placed at the city's intellectual heart. These were not buildings that simply appeared where space allowed. They were pillars of identity placed with strategic intent on the original blueprint. The grid facilitated defense, with straight avenues allowing rapid troop movement, and trade, with goods flowing efficiently from the twin harbors into the commercial districts. How did a sketch in barley meal become the greatest city of the Hellenistic world? Because it was never just a sketch. It was a binding vision of destiny. Alexander wanted a city that would bear his name and cement his legacy for all time, and he understood that such permanence required a complete design before a single foundation stone was laid. Alexandria stands as a testament to the power of a visionary plan to shape not just stone and mortar, but the very flow of history, commerce, and ideas across millennia. But a blueprint drawn in sand is one thing. A city carved into the earth to mirror the heavens is another. From the Mediterranean, we journey to the heart of ancient China, to a capital so meticulously planned it became the template for an empire's soul. Chang'an, the glorious capital of the Tang dynasty, was not merely a place to live, it was a physical declaration of cosmic harmony and imperial order. Its walls formed a near-perfect rectangle, a colossal square grid oriented to the cardinal directions, a geometric shape of profound symbolic power. This was not an aesthetic choice, it was a philosophical imperative. The city's design was rooted in Confucian principles of social hierarchy and the ancient practice of feng shui, which sought to align human structures with the invisible energies of the earth and sky. At the northern center of this vast rectangle sat the palace city, the seat of the emperor, deliberately positioned to align with the pole star, the celestial pivot around which the heavens turned. In this plan, the emperor was not just a ruler, he was the human axis mundi, the central pillar linking the earthly realm with the divine. This grand vision was executed with astonishing precision long before construction crews ever broke ground. Historical texts like the Tang Huiyao describe in detail the planning process, which used standardized measurement units like the li to plot every street and ward. The city followed the idealized well-field system, an ancient Chinese model of land division that created a perfect grid of 9 squares. This conceptual grid was scaled up to monumental proportions, dictating the layout of the entire metropolis. Specific, pre-allocated zones were designated for the 2 great official markets, the East and West, where trade was strictly regulated. There were wards for temples, for administrative bureaus, and over 100 residential wards, each enclosed by its own walls and gates that were locked at night. This was urban planning as a tool of social control and stability, a way to organize a population that swelled to over 1 million people. The symmetry was absolute and intentional. The main thoroughfare, the colossal Vermilion Bird Street, ran straight as an arrow from the southern gate to the administrative city, a central spine over 500 feet wide. Every major gate on each side had a corresponding gate directly opposite, creating long, uninterrupted vistas that emphasized endless perspective and imperial authority. What does such rigid, breathtaking symmetry truly communicate? It announces that here chaos has been banished. Here, human society operates with the predictable, harmonious order of the stars themselves. Chang'an's grid was a physical manifesto, a stone and timber argument for a perfectly harmonious empire under heaven's mandate. It was a master plan that facilitated everything from grand ceremonial processions to the nightly curfew, proving that a vision etched into parchment could govern the daily rhythm of life for centuries. This level of premeditated order raises a compelling question. If a city could be designed to reflect cosmic perfection, what happens when the plan itself is considered a sacred, magical object? Our next destination holds the answer in a city where the blueprint was not just a guide but a divine revelation. Across the Atlantic, a different kind of grid took shape, one not of stone or brick but of earth and sky. In the fertile floodplain of the Mississippi River, where the modern city of St. Louis now stands, a metropolis of grass and soil once pulsed with life. Cahokia, to stand on the great central plaza today, is to feel the echo of a profound communal vision. This was not a city that grew slowly from a village. Around the year 1050 of the Common Era, something remarkable happened. Archaeological evidence shows a sudden, explosive burst of construction, a coordinated effort that reshaped the landscape on a colossal scale. This was not organic growth, it was a declaration. A powerful ruling elite, as archaeologist Timothy Porketat suggests, had a master plan, and they mobilized thousands of people to bring it into being, transforming the site into the paramount ceremonial and political center of North America. The plan was written not on parchment but in the very topography. At its heart was the Grand Plaza, a vast, level expanse covering nearly 50 acres, deliberately cleared and maintained. This was the ceremonial stage, the public square for gatherings that unified the community. Arranged around this central void were over 120 earthen mounds, built in distinct clusters and patterns. These were not random piles of dirt. Their placement reveals a sophisticated understanding of space and hierarchy. The largest monk's mound dominates the site. A colossal terraced platform rising 100 feet high, it was positioned with clear intent at the core of the design, directly north of the plaza. Its location was premeditated, anchoring the entire urban layout and serving as the literal and symbolic high point of Cahokian society, likely supporting the residence of a paramount leader or a temple. But the true genius of Cahokia's blueprint is found in its alignment with cosmic cycles. On the western edge of the plaza, archaeologists discovered the remains of large, circular patterns of upright wooden posts, now called wood henges. These were not fences, they were sophisticated solar calendars, certain posts aligned with the rising sun at the equinoxes and solstices, casting shadows that would mark the passage of the seasons across the plaza. This means the city's central axis, the relationship between the Great Mound and the plaza, was likely calibrated to these solar events. How did a society without written records or the wheel coordinate the movement of millions of baskets of earth? The answer lies in the shared vision encoded in the plan itself. The layout was a physical script, a three-dimensional diagram that everyone could see and understand. Building a mound was not just labor, it was participation in a sacred geography, aligning their community with the fundamental order of the cosmos. The rapid construction tells us this vision was compelling enough to unite people across the region, creating a planned complexity that rivaled any old world city. Cahokia's mounds are a silent testament to the power of a collective idea, proving that a master plan can be felt in the soil long after the last voice has fallen silent. This drive to harmonize with celestial order appears again, thousands of miles away, in a city where the streets themselves were designed as a celestial clock. The stone walls of Great Zimbabwe curve and flow like a second skin over the ancient granite hills. This is a city that grew from the land itself, not in spite of it. Rising in southern Africa between the 11th and 15th centuries, its builders did not impose a rigid, foreign geometry upon the landscape. Instead, they followed a different kind of blueprint, one that listened to the contours of the earth. The result is a breathtaking harmony between human intention and natural form, a master plan written in dry stone walls that required no mortar, only impeccable skill and a profound understanding of place. The city's layout is a clear, premeditated statement of social order. Historian Thomas Huffman's work reveals a complex spatial organization with three distinct planned zones. At the summit of the hill sits the hill complex, a series of enclosures with narrow, labyrinthine passages, likely reserved for the ruling elite and spiritual rites. Below, in the valley, sprawls the great enclosure, a vast circular precinct surrounded by a monumental 30-foot-high wall. This was the public and ceremonial heart, a space designed to awe and to administer. Further out, the remains of the valley settlements show where the broader community lived and worked. This was not a haphazard arrangement. It was a deliberate, preconceived hierarchy in stone, reflecting a stratified society where political authority and spiritual power were architecturally encoded from the very beginning. The great enclosure itself is a marvel of pre-construction design. Its most iconic feature, the solid conical tower, stands perfectly integrated within the curved wall. Its purpose remains a mystery, perhaps a granary symbolizing wealth or a spiritual marker, but its placement is no accident. The entire structure, with its narrow, parallel passageways and meticulously crafted chevron and herringbone patterns on the walls, speaks of an advanced architectural vision executed with unwavering consistency. The walls follow subtle, elegant curves, their stability achieved through precise stone shaping and a batter, or inward slope, that has defied centuries. This required a master plan, a shared knowledge of technique and form that every builder understood before a single stone was lifted. What does this non-orthogonal, organic plan tell us? It reveals a society that derived its authority from a deep connection to the land and control over a vast trade network that stretched to the coasts of the Indian Ocean. The city's wealth was built on gold, ivory, and commerce, and its layout facilitated that control, with spaces designated for the management of goods and tribute. The plan projected stability, permanence, and sacred authority. It was a design that harmonized with nature to better project the power of the kings and the spirits they served. Great Zimbabwe teaches us that a master plan does not require straight lines. It requires a clear vision, one that can turn the very bones of the earth into a testament of civilization. This principle of integrating design with profound belief finds a starkly different, yet equally deliberate, expression in a city built not on trade but on a promise of eternity. The concept of a city as a sacred diagram finds perhaps its purest expression in a place of startling age. In the stark, sun-baked Soup Valley of Peru, the stones of Caral whisper a secret over 5,000 years old. This is not merely an early settlement. It is a fully realized urban blueprint carved into the desert at the very dawn of civilization in the Americas. Its layout is a masterclass in premeditated design, a clear answer to a profound question. How does a society first learn to build a city? Caral's founders began with a vision of cosmic and social order, and they etched that vision into the valley floor with unwavering conviction. The city's core is a central public space, a vast open arena flanked by 6 massive pyramidal mounds. These are not random hills. Their placement is deliberate and hierarchical, with the largest, the Pyramid Mayor, dominating the complex. Surrounding this ceremonial heart are distinct residential sectors, neatly separated by topography and design. This is not organic growth, it is a zoning plan from another age. Archaeologist Ruth Shady, who led the site's modern rediscovery, argues this was a physical expression of social and religious concepts. The entire city was planned to facilitate 2 great pillars of early civilization: collective labor and ritual calendar events. The sunken circular plazas, like amphitheaters carved into the earth, were stages for public ceremonies that synchronized the community with agricultural cycles and celestial events. But the most compelling evidence for a master plan lies in the construction itself. Studies of the monumental architecture reveal something extraordinary. The major pyramids were not built one after another over generations. They rose simultaneously. This means that from the very beginning, the leaders of Caral did not just imagine one temple, they envisioned an entire sacred landscape. A unified blueprint dictated the location, size, and relationship of every major structure before the first basket of stone was hauled. How did a society without metal, without the wheel, without even formal writing, coordinate such an ambitious, synchronized project? The answer is in the plan's elegant simplicity and its deep symbolic power. The design itself was the instruction manual. The central plaza was the gathering point for labor crews. The alignment of mounds likely marked solar or stellar events, turning the entire city into a communal calendar and a testament to shared belief. This planned complexity forces us to rethink our timelines. Caral flourished 1,000 years before the Great Pyramids of Giza, proving that the human impulse to design perfect, premeditated cities is not a late development in history, but a foundational one. It challenges the notion that urban planning evolved slowly from chaotic villages. Here, at the very beginning, was a complete idea, a sacred city born whole from a collective dream of order. If Caral shows us the blueprint at civilization's dawn, what happens when that blueprint is designed not just for ceremony, but for perfect, unchanging control? The geometry of power finds its most vivid expression in a city of glazed blue brick and golden gods. Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar II was not just an imperial capital, it was a cosmological diagram built of earth and ambition. Every wall, every gate, every street in its reconstruction was laid out according to a sacred schematic, a master plan that sought to mirror the structure of the universe itself. To walk its processional way was to traverse a path of divine intention. Ancient texts and painstaking archaeology reveal a city conceived as a perfect square, bisected by the Euphrates River, with its inner fortifications described as a double ring of towering walls. This was not defensive architecture alone, it was symbolic, representing the cosmic order and the impregnable might of its king and its patron god Marduk. The city's plan was a physical theology, and its most breathtaking element was the Ishtar Gate. This was not merely an entrance, it was a pre-planned crescendo of color and myth. Covered in glazed bricks of a profound lapis lazuli blue, it was adorned with rows of alternating bulls and dragons, symbols of the gods Adad and Marduk. This gate was the ceremonial anchor for the city's main artery, the processional way. This street was a straight, paved corridor over half a mile long, with walls lined with over 120 glazed lion figures. Its path was fixed in the blueprint, designed for one primary purpose, to serve as the sacred route for the New Year's festival, where the statue of Marduk would be paraded from his temple to a special shrine outside the city. The street was quite literally a path for a god, its design ensuring his journey was one of flawless grandeur and cosmic significance. Historians like Herodotus marveled at its scale and order, describing a metropolis of such planned regularity it seemed otherworldly. At the heart of this divine geometry stood the ziggurat Etemenanke, meaning the foundation of heaven and earth. This stepped tower, which likely inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, was the axis mundi, the central pillar connecting the earthly city with the celestial realm. Its location was not chosen by convenience, it was the focal point of the entire cosmological plan. What did it mean to live in a city where your daily route was part of a heavenly map? It meant that administration and reverence were woven from the same thread. The straight, planned streets facilitated the movement of troops and goods, yes, but they also choreographed the spiritual life of the empire. The pre-construction vision for Babylon was a tool of statecraft and faith, declaring that here, human law and divine order were one and the same. This was urban planning as an act of world building, an attempt to create a permanent, perfect microcosm on the banks of the Euphrates. The ambition is staggering, to design a city that was itself a temple, where every brick whispered a prayer to the gods of Mesopotamia. Machu Picchu does not occupy its mountain, it converses with it. High in the Peruvian Andes, this 15th century citadel is a breathtaking dialogue between human design and the raw power of the earth. At first glance, its terraces and temples appear to be a natural outgrowth of the granite peaks, as if the mountain itself had dreamed them into being. But this is an illusion of genius. Every curve of a wall, every step of a staircase, was the result of a sophisticated, premeditated plan that had to account for one of the most dramatic topographies on the planet. The city is clearly divided into distinct pre-zoned sectors. To the south, vast agricultural terraces cascade down the slopes, each one a feat of engineering that created flat, fertile land where none existed, complete with subsurface drainage to prevent erosion. To the north, the urban sector unfolds with its plazas, residences, and workshops, and at the spiritual heart, the religious sector crowns the site with the Teotihuacan stone, the Temple of the Sun, and the Room of the Three Windows. This was not a hapless cluster of buildings, it was a deliberate blueprint for a self-sufficient community in the sky. Archaeologist Johann Reinhardt's research emphasizes how the entire site was planned around sacred geography. The Incas saw the landscape as alive, filled with huacas or sacred places. Machu Picchu's layout was carefully surveyed to integrate these natural features, orienting major structures toward specific mountain peaks or apus, considered protective deities, and aligning windows and stones with the rising sun at the winter solstice. This celestial alignment required astronomical knowledge to be baked into the architectural plans from the very start, but the master plan's true triumph is invisible. It flows, an intricate network of stone channels and fountains brought fresh spring water from nearly a kilometer away, distributing it through a carefully graded sequence of 16 ceremonial fountains before carrying waste away. Designing this gravity-fed system required an advanced understanding of hydraulics and a comprehensive survey of the entire mountainside long before the first foundation was laid. How did planners account for such extreme and unstable slopes? The answer is in the stonework itself. The precision of the mortarless masonry, where blocks fit together with impossible tightness, was not just for aesthetics. This technique, called ashlar, allowed the structures to settle and shift during earthquakes without collapsing. The plan was inherently flexible, designed to move with the mountain it adorned. Machu Picchu stands as the ultimate testament to a philosophy of planned synergy. It proves that a master blueprint is not about imposing a rigid grid upon nature, but about listening to the land, understanding its rhythms and perils, and then crafting a human habitat that exists in respectful, intelligent harmony with it all. This raises a fascinating parallel. If a mountain citadel can be planned for celestial harmony, what about a city designed from scratch for pure, idealized commerce? Our journey takes a sharp turn from sacred peaks to a grid of pure profit. The myth of the labyrinth is a story about a trap, a place of confusion designed to hold a monster. But the real labyrinth of Knossos reveals a different truth, a complex plan built not to imprison but to empower. This sprawling Minoan palace complex, rising on Crete around 2000 BC, presents a puzzle of a different kind. Its corridors wind and twist, its rooms connect in unexpected ways, creating a maze-like impression that feels almost organic. Yet this was not architectural chaos. It was a sophisticated, premeditated design for a civilization that thrived on trade, ceremony, and centralized power. The genius of Knossos lies in its intricate functionality, a blueprint for a palace that was also a city, a warehouse, a temple, and a throne. At its heart is a vast central courtyard, the fixed axis around which all life revolved. This open space was the lungs of the complex, providing light and air to the dense network of rooms that surrounded it. From this stable core, the design unfolds in a seemingly bewildering array of levels and directions. Sir Arthur Evans, who excavated the site, uncovered storage magazines lined with massive pithoi jars for holding oil, grain, and wine, their locations carefully planned near entrances for efficient trade. Residential quarters for the elite were situated for privacy and coolness, while ceremonial rooms like the throne room were placed with deliberate theatricality, accessible via specific processional routes. This apparent disorder was, in fact, a highly advanced response to the environment and social needs. The winding corridors and strategically placed light wells created natural ventilation, a passive cooling system for the Mediterranean heat. The multi-story construction with grand staircases was a feat of pre-engineering that required a deep understanding of load and space long before the first column was raised. What does this non-grid labyrinthine plan tell us about Minoan governance? It speaks of a fluid, adaptable authority, one comfortable with complexity. The design facilitated control not through rigid military order, but through the careful management of resources and ritual. To move through Knossos was to navigate a landscape of power, where the flow of goods, people, and sacred practices was choreographed by the architecture itself. The very complexity that seems confusing to an outsider was a tool of administration, allowing a centralized elite to oversee commerce, industry, and religious ceremony from within a single, magnificent structure. The myth of the Minotaur's maze may have grown from the awe this place inspired in later visitors, who saw not a master plan but an incomprehensible wonder. Knossos proves that a pre-designed city can embrace intricacy without a single straight line, finding its order in a different kind of logic, one written in winding corridors and sun-drenched courtyards. This embrace of organic form guided by deep purpose finds a startling echo far to the east, in a city plan so perfectly adapted to its environment it seems to have grown from the riverbanks themselves. The Roman answer to urban design was not a singular masterpiece, but a perfect, repeatable formula. In the harsh, sun-scorched landscape of modern-day Algeria, the ruins of Timgad stand as a testament to this imperial logic. Founded around the year 100 of the Common Era by Emperor Trajan, this was not a city that evolved, it was a city that was stamped, fully formed, onto the North African sands. Timgad, known as Thamugadi to the Romans, was a colony for retired veterans of the Third Legion, a planned community where the very blueprint was a tool of control and cultural identity. Its layout is the quintessential Roman grid, a geometric exercise in order so precise it takes your breath away. At its heart are the two main thoroughfares, the Cardo running north-south and the Decumanus running east-west, intersecting at the city's center like axes on a map. This cross divided the city into 4 perfect quarters, each further subdivided into neat, square blocks called insulae. This was the classic castrum plan, the layout of a permanent military camp, translated into a civilian settlement. Every element of urban life had its pre-assigned square on this stone chessboard. The central forum for commerce and politics, the theater for entertainment, the public baths for hygiene and socializing, the library for learning, all were placed within their designated insulae from the very first day of construction. Walking its straight, colonnaded streets, you can still see the ruts worn by cartwheels, a testament to the relentless, orderly traffic this plan was built to handle. But Timgad was more than just a pretty grid. It was a complete system. Archaeological excavations reveal that the sophisticated infrastructure was not an afterthought. It was part of the original template. A network of sewers ran beneath the stone-paved streets, and an aqueduct channeled fresh water into public fountains and baths. This was urban planning as a packaged commodity, a kit of parts that Rome could deploy anywhere from the deserts of Africa to the forests of Britain. How did a standard template become such a powerful tool of empire? Because it was a physical manifestation of Roman values, discipline, and civilization. For a retired soldier settling in a foreign land, these straight, familiar streets were a comfort and a statement. They announced that here Roman law prevailed. Here Roman order triumphed over chaos. The plan enforced a predictable, manageable society where defense was straightforward and administration was simple. Inscriptions found at the site confirm this was a colony built ex nihilo, from nothing, according to a singular vision. Timgad's geometric perfection is a frozen moment of imperial confidence, proving that the most powerful master plan is often not the most unique, but the one that can be copied endlessly to turn the frontiers of an empire into a mirror of its heart. Angkor's temples rise from the jungle like stone mountains, but they are only the most visible peaks of a submerged world. To stand before the towering spires of Angkor Wat is to see just one piece of a puzzle that sprawled for over 1,000 square kilometers. This was not a city in the conventional sense with a clear boundary wall. It was a vast, engineered landscape, a hydraulic metropolis planned and executed on a scale that seems to defy the very tools of its era. The master plan here was not written in streets alone, but in water. For centuries, the true extent of this design remained hidden beneath dense forest and rice paddies. Then, airborne laser technology called LiDAR pierced the canopy, revealing the ghostly imprint of a colossal grid. What it showed was breathtaking, an intricate network of canals, reservoirs, roads, and community temples laid out in a near-perfect alignment to the cardinal directions. This was a premeditated urban fabric, a geometric order imposed upon the land long before the first stones of the great temples were ever quarried. How do you feed a population that may have reached 1 million people in a region of punishing dry seasons and torrential monsoon floods? The Khmer kings, like Suryavarman II, who commissioned Angkor Wat, had an answer. They designed a machine. At its heart was the West Barre, a massive artificial reservoir stretching 8 kilometers long and 2.2 kilometers wide, an inland sea built by human hands. This was the cornerstone of a system of smaller reservoirs, canals, and moats that functioned as a giant water battery. During the monsoon, the network captured and stored floodwaters. During the dry season, that same water was released through carefully graded channels to irrigate vast rice fields, transforming volatile seasonal swings into a reliable, year-round agricultural engine. Archaeologist Damien Evans describes this as a hydraulic city, a landscape entirely reshaped to create sustainable abundance. But the water was more than just a practical resource, it was sacred geometry. The layout symbolized the Hindu cosmos, with the central temple mountain representing Mount Meru, the axis of the world, and the surrounding moats and reservoirs echoing the cosmic oceans. The plan was a spiritual act as much as an administrative one, meant to align the kingdom with divine order. The straight, raised causeways that connected temple complexes were not just roads, they were ceremonial pathways and vital dikes, part of the water management grid. Every element served multiple purposes, from transportation and defense to ritual and rice production. This level of integrated planning required a staggering degree of centralized control and astronomical foresight. Surveyors would have had to chart the gentle slope of the land over immense distances to ensure water flowed precisely where it was needed, generations into the future. Angkor's blueprint was an act of environmental engineering so complete that the city itself became an ecosystem, a testament to the power of a vision that could see a civilization not just in stone, but in the very flow of water across the land. The symmetry of power finds its most deliberate stage not in a living metropolis but on an artificial mountain. Persepolis was never meant to be a city of homes and markets. It was conceived as a singular instrument of imperial theater, a ceremonial capital built from the ground up by Darius I and his successors to project the absolute authority of the Achaemenid Empire. Its entire existence was a premeditated act, beginning with the colossal terrace. This immense platform, over 12 hectares in area, was not a natural hill. It was an architectural foundation, a perfectly leveled plain created through staggering earthworks. Workers carved into a rocky spur and built up the sides with massive stone blocks, flattening the summit to create a blank canvas according to a master plan. This was the ultimate pre-construction decision, to literally reshape the landscape to fit a vision of order before a single column was raised. Upon this artificial stage, the blueprint unfolded with rigid, symbolic precision. The entire complex is organized along a central north-south axis, a processional spine designed for one purpose, to choreograph the movement of tribute and awe. Every visitor, from provincial governors to foreign ambassadors, would have experienced this calculated journey. They entered through the monumental gate of all nations, flanked by colossal winged bulls, a deliberate threshold marking the transition from the outside world into the empire's divine order. From there, the grand stairway guided them upward onto the terrace itself, their path funneled toward the heart of power. The focal point was the Apadana, the great audience hall. Its forest of 72 intricately carved columns, each over 60 feet tall, created a space of overwhelming grandeur. This was where the king, elevated on his throne, would receive representatives from the empire's 23 nations. The design ensured that every approaching delegate moved through a landscape of meticulously planned symbolism. The famous reliefs on the Apadana stairways are not mere decoration, they are the script of the spectacle. They depict a frozen procession of emissaries, each group in their distinctive national dress bringing gifts, a permanent stone record of the empire's reach and the subservience it commanded. What message does this axial, hierarchical plan convey? It communicates that here all paths lead to the king. The symmetry of the vistas, the enforced procession, the elevated terrace, all were architectural tools to diminish the individual and magnify the institution. Even the treasury, a vast storeroom for the empire's wealth, was placed according to the plan, its location signifying that economic power was a pillar of the state, secured and displayed. Persepolis was less a capital and more a three-dimensional treaty, a stone proclamation that harmony and order flowed from a single, central source. Its destruction by Alexander the Great was so poignant because he was not burning a city, he was shattering a meticulously crafted idea. This pursuit of a perfect, symbolic blueprint, however, was not confined to empires of the ancient world. A very different kind of planned harmony was taking shape on a distant continent, where a city's design sought to balance not nations, but the very forces of the universe. The prophecy demanded an impossible city, an eagle perched on a cactus devouring a serpent. This was the sign the Mexica people had been told to seek. When they saw it on a swampy island in Lake Texcoco, they faced a staggering challenge to build a metropolis where solid ground was scarce. The result was Tenochtitlan, a capital that did not adapt to its environment. It conquered it through a master plan of breathtaking ambition. This was not a settlement that inched outward from a village core. From its mythic founding in the year 1325, the city was conceived as a cosmic diagram, a mirror of the Aztec universe. Chroniclers like Bernal Diaz del Castillo, who first saw it with the Spanish conquistadors, wrote of his astonishment, describing great towers and buildings rising from the water, a thing of enchantment. The layout was a perfect expression of a premeditated vision. The city was divided into 4 great quarters or campan, radiating from a central, sacred axis. This 4-part division was no accident. It mirrored the Aztec conception of the cosmos, which was itself divided into 4 directions, each associated with a god, a color, and a divine force. The entire island was a living map of their spiritual world. At the precise center of this quadripartite plan stood the sacred precinct, dominated by the Templo Mayor, the Great Temple. This dual pyramid, dedicated to the gods of rain and war, was the axis mundi, the pivot point connecting the earthly realm with the levels of heaven and the underworld. Its central location was fixed in the very first plans, ensuring that every street, every canal, every neighborhood would be oriented toward this spiritual heart. How do you pre-plan a city on a lake? The answer lies in a blend of sacred geometry and radical engineering. The Aztecs did not just build on their island, they expanded it. They created new land through chinampas, ingenious floating gardens made by weaving reeds and stakes into rectangular frames, then piling them with mud and vegetation from the lake bed. These fertile plots were not random. They were laid out in a neat, grid-like pattern in the shallow waters around the city, a pre-planned agricultural zone that fed a population perhaps as large as 200,000. Canals served as the transportation network between these garden plots, functioning like watery streets. But water was both a resource and a threat. The lake was saline and prone to flooding. The Aztec response was a masterstroke of hydraulic planning. They constructed a massive dike over 10 miles long to separate the fresh waters of the city's springs from the brackish waters of the main lake. They built aqueducts to bring fresh water from the mainland, and a complex system of canals and sluice gates within the city itself for management and transport. Every causeway that connected Tenochtitlan to the shore, like the great causeways of Iztapalapa and Tepeyac, was a planned artery, deliberately aligned and equipped with bridges that could be removed for defense. Even the bustling market at Tlatelolco, so vast it stunned the Spanish, was a designated, pre-planned zone within the urban fabric. Tenochtitlan was a machine for living, a planned ecosystem where cosmology, agriculture, and urban administration flowed together as seamlessly as the water in its canals. It proved that a master plan could begin with a divine vision and, through sheer human ingenuity, raise a mirror of heaven from the depths of a lake. The desert does not give up its secrets easily, but along the ancient trade routes, it offered an oasis of staggering ambition. Palmyra rose from the sands of Syria not as a capital of empire, but as a sovereign city of commerce, and its very skeleton was built to serve that singular purpose. To walk its grand colonnade, even in memory, is to traverse the spine of a caravan empire. This was not a winding market lane that happened to grow crowded. It was a monumental thoroughfare over 1 kilometer long, deliberately surveyed and laid out as the city's central axis during its golden age in the 1st through 3rd centuries. Over 500 columns once lined this processional way, their stone canopies offering shade to a ceaseless flow of merchants, camels, and goods moving between the Roman and Parthian worlds. The design fused a classical Greco-Roman sense of order with local Syrian artistry, creating a unique urban language of power and profit. This colonnaded street was the masterstroke of a comprehensive plan. It did not simply connect points in the city, it choreographed the entire experience of trade and status. At one end stood the Temple of Bel, a colossal sanctuary blending Near Eastern and classical architecture, its preeminent location signaling that divine favor underpinned all prosperity. Along the street's length, grand monuments like the theater and the sprawling agora, or market square, were placed at strategic nodes. The agora was not a random open space, it was a planned commercial exchange, a secure enclosure where deals were struck under the watchful eyes of statues honoring wealthy merchant patrons. Inscriptions carved into the stones themselves tell us of these patrons, families who funded the construction of specific sections of the colonnade or the ornate triumphal arches that punctuated it. This was civic planning funded by and for the mercantile elite, a physical ledger of their success. What does a city's spine reveal about its economic heart? In Palmyra, the spine was the heart. The straight, colonnaded axis served a brutally practical logic. It efficiently funneled the immense caravan traffic from the desert gates directly into the commercial and administrative core, minimizing congestion in the surrounding residential districts. The covered walkways protected precious silks, spices, and dyes from the relentless sun, while the grandeur of the architecture performed a constant sales pitch. It displayed the city's wealth, stability, and sophistication to every arriving trader, assuring them this was a place where great fortunes could be safely made and lavishly spent. While residential areas may have grown more organically, the monumental core, this engineered spine with its temples, baths, and markets, reflects a coordinated vision. It was a premeditated stage set, built over generations but following a shared blueprint to elevate Palmyra from a mere stop on the map to a legendary destination in its own right. The city's plan was its brand, a stone and marble promise of reliability and reward in the midst of an unforgiving sea of sand. The turtle is an ancient symbol of endurance, its hard shell a promise of protection. In the heart of China's Shaanxi province, that symbol was translated directly into stone and earth. Pingyao, its formidable walls rising in the 14th century during the Ming dynasty, is not just a preserved city, it is a perfect, premediate diagram of prosperity. Its entire layout was conceived as a giant turtle, a deliberate shape chosen for its auspicious meaning of longevity and unshakable defense. This was not a whimsical artistic choice, it was urban planning as a sacred act, a blueprint designed to attract and safeguard immense wealth. The city's 6 gates correspond to the creature's body, 2 southern gates forming the head, 2 northern gates the tail, and 4 gates on the east and west forming the 4 legs. The tortoise in Chinese cosmology is a celestial animal associated with the north and the element of water, which in turn symbolizes the flow of money. The shape itself was the first and most powerful statement of the city's intended purpose, to be an impregnable vault for the empire's finances. Within this symbolic shell, the grid was laid out with mathematical and philosophical precision. A single, straight central axis runs from the southern gate to the northern gate, a spinal column for the urban body. Along this central line, the most important civic and spiritual structures were placed according to strict feng shui principles. Government offices, temples like the city god temple, and the central market were all positioned to harness positive energy, or Kai, and to reflect the Confucian social hierarchy. The symmetry is absolute, with east and west mirroring each other in a balance meant to promote social harmony and, by extension, commercial stability. This was a master plan enforced by imperial decree, a template for order that left nothing to chance. The result was a cohesive urban environment where every street, from the 4 main avenues to the 72 winding lanes, served the overall design. The uniformity of its grey brick courtyard houses, with their inward-facing layouts and distinctive upturned eaves, creates a rhythmic, orderly streetscape that whispers of controlled prosperity. These were not just homes, they were the offices and vaults of the Rishingchang Exchange Shop, considered the first draft bank in China, and its many competitors. The city's very architecture facilitated its role as a financial hub, with secure, private courtyards ideal for conducting discreet and monumental transactions. How does a shape truly influence a city's fortune? In Pingyao, the turtle design was a self-fulfilling prophecy. The formidable walls, studded with 72 watchtowers representing the 72 disciples of Confucius, provided tangible security that attracted merchants and bankers from across the realm. The pre-planned, efficient grid allowed for the swift movement of goods and information, the lifeblood of commerce. Even the drainage systems were part of the original design, ensuring the city remained clean and functional, a practical necessity for a dense population of wealthy elites. The plan created an environment of supreme trust and order, the essential foundation for a credit-based financial system to flourish. Wealth flowed into Pingyao because its design announced that wealth would be protected here. The master plan was a 3-dimensional business prospectus, a guaranteed environment for economic success carved into the very layout of the streets. It stands as a powerful testament to the belief that urban form could dictate fate, that a city built like a turtle would live long and prosper beyond the dreams of its founders. Hattusa's citadel clings to the rock like a suit of stone armor. Perched high in the rugged Anatolian plateau, this was the nerve center of the mighty Hittite Empire, a capital forged not on a plain but on a mountain. Its plan is a masterclass in strategic adaptation, where the blueprint did not fight the landscape but conspired with it. From the very beginning, the city's layout was a deliberate exercise in turning every cliff, every outcrop, into a component of defense and control. The terrain dictated a division into 2 distinct pre-zoned levels, the upper city and the lower city, each with a role in the empire's grand scheme. The upper city, crowning the heights, was the fortified administrative and religious heart, a place of temples and palaces. The lower city, sprawling on the slopes below, housed the workshops, storerooms, and residences of the populace. This was not a casual separation. It was a hierarchical design that placed the symbols of power literally above the community, a constant visual reminder of the empire's structure. The city's legendary defenses were woven into this plan from the outset. The massive walls, some over 6 miles in total length, did not follow a simple, straight line. They snaked along the highest ridges, incorporating natural rock formations as impenetrable bastions. The famous gates, like the Lion Gate and the Sphinx Gate, were not mere doorways, they were monumental psychological thresholds, guarded by colossal stone creatures meant to intimidate any approaching enemy. Archaeologists studying the foundations have found that these walls and gates were part of the initial construction phase, proving that security was the first principle of Hattusa's master plan. But how do you sustain a capital on a windswept mountain? The answer lies in another layer of brilliant pre-planning, a hidden network of ingenuity. Beneath the city's stony surface, engineers designed a complex water management system. They constructed large, subterranean clay pipe channels to capture and redirect spring water, and built massive, lined reservoirs within the city walls to ensure a reliable supply during sieges or dry seasons. This hydraulic system was not an afterthought, it was infrastructure calculated into the original blueprint, a prerequisite for survival. At the spiritual and political core of this fortified maze stood the great temple, dedicated to the storm god Teshub and the sun goddess Arina. Its location was no accident. Despite the uneven ground, it was positioned with precise intentionality within the upper city's plan, aligned to reflect Hittite cosmological concepts where the temple served as a bridge between the divine and the king, the empire's chief priest. Nearby, the plans reserved space for a structure of a different kind of power, the royal archives. Thousands of baked clay tablets were found here, containing everything from diplomatic correspondence to legal codes. This library was not stored in a random room. It was built into the administrative district by design, signifying that knowledge, recorded and organized, was as vital to state security as any wall. Hattusa's genius was its ruthless practicality. The master planners looked at a broken, difficult landscape and saw a fortress. They understood that pre-construction design meant more than drawing streets. It meant surveying for defensible ridges, calculating water flow, and zoning for both ceremony and supply. The city's layout was a three-dimensional chessboard, where every move was planned against potential threats, turning the mountain itself into the empire's strongest guardian. This fusion of defensive pragmatism and spiritual order reveals a fascinating pattern, a blueprint where security shapes sacred space. Yet, what happens when the driving force behind a city's plan is not defense or commerce, but the pursuit of perfect geometric harmony for its own sake? An emperor can reshape the world, but his most personal project often begins at home. For Septimius Severus, born in the bustling port of Leptis Magna, the entire Roman Empire became his canvas, yet his grandest brushstroke was reserved for his birthplace. In the early 3rd century of the Common Era, he launched a monumental building program that was less a renovation and more a reimagining, a master plan of imperial vanity and civic pride that transformed the already prosperous Punic Roman city into a breathtaking showcase of Roman power in Africa. This was not haphazard patronage. It was a unified architectural vision executed by the empire's finest architects, a deliberate plan to elevate a provincial capital into a mirror of Rome itself. The ambition was etched into the very coastline with a colossal new harbor. This was engineering as spectacle, a deep-water artificial basin protected by massive moles and a lighthouse, designed to welcome the grain fleets that fed Rome and to announce the city's upgraded status to every arriving ship. From this new maritime gateway, a grand, colonnaded street was laid out, a processional spine stretching over 1,200 feet into the heart of the city. Flanked by hundreds of marble columns and lined with shops, this street did not meander. It carved a straight, ceremonial path directly to the city's renovated forum. This axial design connected the economic engine of the harbor to the political and social center with flawless, premeditated logic. The plan's crowning jewel was the magnificent Severan Basilica. Towering and lavishly decorated with imported marble and intricate sculpted panels depicting the emperor's family and mythological scenes, this was not merely a law court, it was a monument in the guise of a public building. Its placement, closing the northern end of the forum, was calculated for maximum impact, a permanent architectural statement of the Severan dynasty's glory. What does such a comprehensive, late-stage enhancement reveal about the power of an urban blueprint? It demonstrates that a master plan can be a tool of propaganda, a physical narrative written in stone and space. Every element of Severus's scheme was integrated with the existing city with such coherence that it feels like it was always meant to be there. The new harbor worked in concert with older warehouses, the colonnaded street linked new plazas to old temples, and the basilica complemented the existing Capitolium. This seamless fusion suggests that imperial surveyors and architects arrived with a complete set of drawings, a holistic design that considered traffic flow, visual drama, and symbolic messaging all at once. The plan served a dual purpose. It stimulated local economy through massive public works, and it broadcast a clear message across the Mediterranean. Leptis Magna was no longer just a city, it was the hometown of an emperor, and by extension, a direct extension of Rome's majesty. This was legacy building through urban design, an attempt to make a dynasty permanent by embedding it into the very street grid of a metropolis. The city became a stone biography, its new avenues and monuments telling the story of a local boy who conquered the world and then returned to immortalize his success in the landscape of his childhood. The high plateau of the Andes holds a city of stone that seems to converse directly with the sky. Tiwanaku, on the southern shores of Lake Titicaca, is a place where architecture becomes astronomy. From roughly 500 to 1000 of the Common Era, this was the spiritual and political nucleus of a vast culture, and its entire layout was a physical expression of a cosmic vision. The monuments you see today, like the massive Akapana-stepped pyramid and the precisely aligned Kalasasaya temple, are not isolated structures. They are carefully placed components of a grand, premeditated design, a city planned as a ceremonial instrument. The entire site functions as a colossal stone calendar and a three-dimensional map of the heavens. At the heart of this design is the sunken temple, a rectangular courtyard carved several feet below the surrounding ground level. Its walls are studded with carved stone heads, but its true purpose is revealed by its orientation. The entire court is aligned to the cardinal directions with such accuracy that on the equinoxes, the sun rises perfectly over its eastern wall, bathing the interior in light in a predictable, dramatic display. This was not a lucky accident, it was celestial engineering. The nearby Kalasasaya platform, a vast rectangular enclosure defined by immense stone pillars, served as a sophisticated observatory. From within its walls, priests could track the sun's movement against a series of carved stone markers, predicting solstices and equinoxes with remarkable precision. The most famous artifact, the monolithic Gateway of the Sun, likely stood at a focal point within this complex. Its intricate carvings are not merely decorative. Many researchers interpret them as a complex cosmological diagram, a codex in stone depicting deities and calendar cycles. How do you build a city that functions as an observatory? You begin with a shared ideological blueprint, a unified vision of how the universe works, and you translate that vision into surveyor's lines. Archaeologist Alexei Vranish's work reconstructing the city's layout suggests a master plan of staggering foresight. The major monuments are positioned in relation to one another and to distant horizon markers, like mountains on the skyline, creating a network of sight lines for tracking celestial events. This required advanced surveying techniques and a deep, preserved knowledge of astronomy, passed down and applied consistently over centuries of construction. The Akapana pyramid itself, with its complex internal drainage channels, may have symbolized a sacred mountain, its form and function intertwined with rituals connected to water and fertility. cycles dictated by the stars. The city's plan was therefore a kind of permanent ritual. It locked the sacred calendar into the very landscape, ensuring that the community's ceremonies, planting cycles, and political authority remained in harmony with the perceived order of the cosmos. To live in Tiwanaku was to inhabit a model of the universe, where every procession through a gateway or gathering in a sunken court reinforced a connection between the earthly realm and the celestial one. The stones were placed not just to awe, but to observe, to calculate, and to confirm a timeless truth written in the movements of the sun and moon. This pursuit of aligning urban life with cosmic order reveals a universal impulse, yet it finds a startlingly different expression in a city where the plan was meant not to observe the heavens, but to defy the very laws of the earth. The ziggurat of Ur rises from the Mesopotamian plain like a man-made mountain. Its baked brick terraces a stairway for the gods. This was the heart of a Sumerian metropolis, a city that pulsed with life along the banks of the Euphrates. While its residential quarters grew and shifted organically over centuries, the city's spiritual core was a different story. At the center of it all stood the Great Ziggurat, a towering platform temple dedicated to Nana, the moon god. This was not a structure that simply found its place. It was the anchor of a deliberate, sacred blueprint. The entire religious and administrative precinct surrounding it was a premeditated design, a theological concept given physical form. The orientation of the ziggurat's corners to the cardinal points was no accident. It was a precise alignment to the cosmos, a decision made by priests and architects long before the first brick mold was filled with mud. Excavations led by Sir Leonard Woolley in the 1920s revealed a stunning truth about this urban heart. The ziggurat we see today is not the first. It is the final, magnificent iteration of a temple that was rebuilt over and over on the exact same sacred spot, following the same essential plan for generations. Each new king saw it as his duty to refurbish or enlarge the house of the god, often encasing the older structure within a new, larger shell. This practice of sequential rebuilding according to a revered template tells us something profound. The core plan of Ur was not just an architectural guide, it was an eternal idea. The specific dimensions, the orientation, the relationship between the ziggurat, its courtyards, and the surrounding temples were all part of a holy diagram that could not be altered. It was a contract with the divine, a permanent address for celestial power in the human world. What does this constant renewal of a sacred center signify? It signifies a civilization obsessed with continuity and cosmic order. The organic, winding streets of the residential districts could change, but the axis mundi, the connection point between heaven and earth, had to remain constant and true. The design served a dual purpose. It created an awe-inspiring stage for public ritual, reinforcing the authority of the priesthood and the king, and it provided a fixed, unchanging spiritual compass for the entire city. Ur's master plan was therefore one of layered intention. The bustling harbor, the defensive walls, the crowded houses, these elements adapted to the practical needs of a living city. But at its heart, immutable and preordained, was the ziggurat complex, a master plan not of streets, but of faith, rebuilt in every age to the same sacred specifications, ensuring that the moon god Nana would forever find his home among them. The rock column of Sigiriya rises from the Sri Lankan jungle with impossible defiance. This is not a hill with a palace on top. It is a sheer geological fortress, and in the 5th century, King Kasyapa chose it as the site for his capital. The challenge was absolute. How do you design a functional city with all its needs for water, security, and ceremony on the side of a vertical rock face? The answer was a master plan of staggering ingenuity, a three-dimensional blueprint that thought in layers of elevation, not just in squares on a map. Archaeological surveys have revealed that the entire complex, from the water gardens at its base to the palace on the summit, was conceived as a single, integrated system before a single stair was carved. This was a city engineered from the top down and the bottom up simultaneously, a feat of premeditated vertical urbanism. At the base, the plan unfolded in a series of elaborate water gardens, a symmetrical labyrinth of pools, channels, and fountains. These were not merely decorative, they were a sophisticated hydraulic system, using gravity and pressure from reservoirs to create aesthetic displays and supply the entire site, while also forming a beautiful but deliberate moat, the first line of defense. The path then forces a dramatic ascent, a choreographed journey of power. Visitors would climb through a series of guarded terraces, past the famous mirror wall and the breathtaking frescoes of celestial maidens, all placed at specific heights to inspire awe and signify transition. Midway, the giant lion paws flanking the final staircase reveal the plan's symbolic heart. This was the Lion Rock, a gateway to a divine realm. The summit itself, an area of nearly 3 acres, was meticulously leveled and partitioned. The ruins show distinct zones for the royal palace, audience halls, and reservoirs carved directly into the rock to capture rainwater. Every square foot of this aerial perch was allocated in advance, a necessity when working with such limited, precarious space. How does such a vertical plan function as a city? Through ruthless efficiency and multi-purpose design. The water collected at the summit fed the king's baths and then cascaded down through channels to nourish the terraced gardens below, a closed, recirculating system. The single, narrow staircases acted as natural choke points, making the citadel virtually impregnable to assault. The plan served a dual, brilliant purpose. It was both an unassailable fortress for a king fearful of reprisal, and a breathtaking work of art meant to proclaim his legitimacy and genius. Sigiriya was a statement in stone, a declaration that true power could reshape not just the land but the very sky. It proves that a master plan can defy gravity itself, organizing human life not across a plain but along a precipice, turning a mountain into a metropolis and a fear of invasion into a monument of enduring wonder. A city can be shaped like a star, a grid, or a mountain, but in the heart of the Andes, a city was shaped like a predator. Cusco, the navel of the Inca world, was designed in the 15th century under the visionary ruler Pachacuti, not just as a capital, but as a living symbol. A giant puma sprawled across the landscape. This was not a vague artistic impression, it was a precise, sacred geography. The massive zigzagging walls of the fortress Sacsayhuaman formed the jagged teeth and head of the beast, gazing outward as a protector. The confluence of the Tolumayo and Safi rivers carved the line of its spine and tail, while the great central plaza, Hokepota, lay within its belly. To walk its streets was to move within the body of a divine guardian, a constant physical reminder of the empire's power and its connection to the natural world. This animal shape was the first and most profound layer of a master plan that fused cosmology with absolute control. But how do you administer an empire from inside a sacred animal? The Incas answered with a radial system of astonishing organization. From the Coricancha, the temple of the sun at the city's ritual center, 41 invisible lines called secs radiated outward like spokes on a wheel. These were not roads, but conceptual pathways connecting hundreds of huacas or sacred shrines, which could be a spring, a rock outcrop, or a tomb. Each sec was the responsibility of a specific royal lineage, who maintained its shrines and performed the necessary ceremonies on a meticulously scheduled calendar. This system transformed the entire valley into a vast ritual calendar and a social map, binding the nobility to the land and the gods through a web of duties encoded directly into the terrain. The surveying required to establish this radial grid, aligning sight lines from the Coricancha to distant mountain peaks and specific stones, represents a staggering feat of pre-construction planning. It meant the city's spiritual and administrative functions were mapped onto the site long before its stone walls rose to their full glory. Within the outline of the Puma, the Incas then imposed a rigorous orthogonal order. Streets were laid out in a grid with long, straight corridors running parallel to the rivers, creating orderly blocks of finely crafted stone buildings. This practical urbanism within the symbolic form allowed for efficient movement, drainage, and the housing of a diverse, hierarchical population. The plan served every purpose at once. Militarily, Sacsayhuaman's head was an impregnable fortress. Spiritually, the sect system organized time and worship. Politically, the grid enforced social order. What does it mean for a city to embody an animal? In Cusco, it meant that the state itself was a living, breathing entity, a predator in repose whose form commanded reverence and whose design governed every aspect of life from ceremony to commerce. The Puma was not just a symbol, it was the blueprint, a master plan that declared the Inca world was a carefully balanced ecosystem with the city at its powerful, beating heart. A desert is a place of subtraction where life is slowly erased by sun and wind. Yet in the heart of the Caracum, an oasis of staggering complexity did the opposite. It added layer upon layer of civilization for more than 2,000 years. This is Merv in modern Turkmenistan, not a single city but a palimpsest of successive metropolises, each one built with a new master plan directly atop the bones of the old. From the Achaemenid era to the Seljuk Empire, this crucial Silk Road node was repeatedly reimagined, each time with a deliberate, large-scale design that turned the harsh desert into an engine of wealth and power. The most magnificent of these layers is Sultan Kola, the Seljuk city that reached its zenith around the 11th and 12th centuries. Its walls, traced by satellites today, still outline a near-perfect rectangle, a geometric island in a sea of sand. This was not an organic shape. It was a premeditated decision, a colossal enclosure built in a single, coordinated campaign according to a unified vision. Within those walls, archaeologists have uncovered the ghost of a regular street pattern, a grid of avenues leading from monumental gates to a central citadel and the Great Bazaar. The gates themselves, like the imposing portal of the Great Kizkolla, were not mere openings. They were strategic instruments placed by the plan to control the lifeblood of the city, the flow of caravans. They funneled silk, spices, and ideas from the deserts of Persia and the steppes of Central Asia into a secure, administrated space. How does a city not just survive, but dominate in a landscape defined by scarcity? The answer is written in the dust, in the lines of ancient canals. Merv's master planners began not with streets, but with water. Before the first defensive wall was raised, surveyors charted the course of the Murgab River and designed a vast, artificial distribution network. Canals were dug in straight, purposeful lines, their routes decided centrally to maximize the irrigible land within and around the city walls. This hydraulic grid dictated everything. Neighborhoods, gardens, and market squares were all plotted within reach of these life-giving channels. The city's form literally grew from its water lines, a perfect adaptation where urban design served as ecological strategy. This pre-planned infrastructure created a verdant paradise, a shock of green that could support a population of perhaps 200,000 people, making it one of the largest cities on Earth for its time. The defensive foresight was equally profound. The massive, rammed earth walls of Sultan Kola, studded with over 150 towers, were part of the original blueprint, a calculated investment in permanence. They sent a clear signal to every traveler and potential adversary. Here was a stable, wealthy hub where commerce could be conducted without fear. The citadel, the Ark, was positioned with strategic prominence, a final redoubt and a symbol of authority visible from anywhere in the planned grid. Merv's enduring success proves that the most brilliant ancient city plans were holistic systems. They integrated hydrology, defense, and economics into a single resilient design. The city thrived for millennia because each successive civilization looked at the desert and saw not a barrier but a canvas, and on that canvas they drew a perfect, premeditated machine for life. The Indian Ocean's breeze carries whispers through stone doorways long since empty. On the Kenyan coast, shrouded by coastal forest, the ruins of Jedi stand as a silent testament to a different kind of master plan, one not of cosmic alignment, but of sophisticated mercantile community. Founded in the 13th century, this Swahili stone town was not a haphazard cluster of huts, but a deliberately zoned settlement where urban order flowed from a fusion of Islamic principles, African social structures, and the demands of a vast trade network. Its layout reveals a clear, premeditated vision for a prosperous life between the forest and the sea. Walking its sandy paths today, you move through a blueprint. The town is clearly divided into distinct areas. To the north, a walled inner section contains the largest stone houses, a palace complex, and the Friday Mosque, indicating a designated zone for the ruling elite and religious life. Separated by an inner wall, the outer town held smaller, more densely packed coral rag houses for artisans, merchants, and fishermen. This spatial separation of social classes was a conscious design choice, reflecting a hierarchical society where status was literally built into the neighborhood map. The plan also reserved specific areas for commerce, with open spaces that likely served as markets for goods flowing from the interior of Africa and ships from Arabia, India, and beyond. This zoning ensured a functional, orderly flow of people and products, the lifeblood of a town that thrived on being a connected node in a global web. The sophistication of Jedi's plan is most elegantly revealed beneath the surface. The entire town was equipped with a remarkably advanced drainage system. Gutters lined with carved coral stone channeled rainwater and waste away from residences and public spaces, emptying into soak pits. This wasn't an added luxury, it was integral infrastructure, planned from the outset to maintain hygiene and manage the coastal environment for a concentrated population. The very construction speaks of forethought, the use of coral rag and lime mortar creating permanent, fire-resistant structures laid out along streets that, while not a rigid Roman grid, follow a logical, purposeful network connecting gates, squares, and important buildings. Defense was woven into this urban fabric from the beginning. The town's outer wall, with its few, strategically narrow gateways, wasn't a later addition. It was part of the foundational concept, a protective shell that controlled access and offered security from potential threats, allowing trade to flourish inside a guarded space. This integrated defensive plan underscores that Jedi's builders were thinking about long-term stability and the safeguarding of wealth. What does this planned stone town on a tropical coast ultimately reveal? Jedi is a powerful argument against old assumptions. It shows a Swahili culture that was neither purely African nor merely an imitation of foreign Islamic models, but a unique synthesis. The plan reflects Islamic ideals of urban cleanliness and social organization, interpreted through a distinctly local lens and adapted to the materials and needs of the East African coast. The design facilitated the cosmopolitan life its residents led, where a local elder could pray in a mosque with architectural features from the Persian Gulf, then return to a home built with African spatial concepts, all within a town layout designed for global commerce. Jedi's master plan was a physical declaration of a sophisticated, self-confident society that knew exactly how it wanted to live, building a deliberate, orderly world where the monsoon winds brought the wider world to its carefully planned doorstep. Nippur's identity was not written in its walls but in a single, unwavering line. For over 3,000 years, while empires rose and fell around it, this Sumerian city maintained one sacred truth. It belonged not to a king but to a god, Nippur was the earthly domain of Enlil, the supreme deity who decreed the fates of all others. This singular purpose became the city's master plan, a spiritual blueprint so powerful it resisted the tides of political change. While the residential quarters beyond its walls expanded and shifted with the centuries, the heart of the city remained fixed, a fossilized idea of the divine. At its core stood the Ekka, Enlil's temple, whose name translates ominously as mountain house. This was more than a building, it was the axis of the Mesopotamian cosmos, the place where heaven and earth were believed to intersect. The entire city plan radiated from this point, emphasizing its religious role above all else. Archaeologists excavating the site have uncovered a profound pattern. The Ekka and the sacred precinct surrounding it was not merely renovated over the millennia, it was ritually demolished and then meticulously rebuilt time and again on the exact same alignment, following the same foundational plan. Each generation of builders worked from a conservative, pre-designed template, a holy schematic passed down through priests. This was not urban planning in a secular sense, it was an act of religious preservation. The city's form was a contract with the gods, and the terms were non-negotiable. This enduring design is echoed in ancient texts like the Nippur Compendium, a collection of scholarly works that describe the city's cosmological significance. These writings suggest the physical layout of Nippur, with its temples, gates, and processional ways, was meant to mirror a divine blueprint, a celestial map made manifest on the plains of the Euphrates. The city's streets where they were planned likely led pilgrims and priests toward the Ekka, choreographing a journey of increasing sanctity. How does a city's purpose fossilize its plan? In Nippur, the answer is devotion. The political capital of Mesopotamia moved from to Babylon to Assur, but the religious capital remained here, precisely because its design was unchanging. Its value lay in its permanence, its reliability as a divine address. To alter the sacred precinct would be to break a covenant, to risk severing the connection between humanity and the God who granted kings their legitimacy. The master plan was therefore a shield against time itself, ensuring that no matter which empire held sway, Enlil's house stood as it always had, on the same hallowed ground, facing the same ancient stars. Nippur teaches us that the most resilient blueprints are not those of stone but of faith, designs so deeply believed they become eternal. 25 cities spanning millennia and continents, yet they speak a common architectural language. From the grid of Mohenjo-Daro to the sacred Puma of Cusco, these master plans reveal a shared human ambition. They were not simply designs for living, but profound statements about the universe, society, and our place within it. The first powerful thread connecting them is a relentless drive for cosmological alignment. Time and again, we see cities oriented not to the whims of a king or the lay of the land alone, but to the immutable movements of the heavens. Teotihuacan's avenue points to a star cluster. Caral's pyramids rose in concert with celestial cycles. The Kala Sasaya at Tiwanaku functioned as a stone observatory. This was not mere astronomy, it was architecture as a bridge to the divine. By locking their urban blueprints to the sun, moon, and stars, these societies sought to ground their fleeting human endeavors in the eternal rhythm of the cosmos. The city became a clock, a calendar, and a temple all at once, ensuring that daily life resonated with a perceived cosmic order. Equally universal was the use of the master plan to codify social hierarchy. The blueprint was a tool of control, making social status visible and permanent. In Chang'an, the emperor's palace sat at the northern pole of the grid, the human axis mundi. At Great Zimbabwe, the elite occupied the hill complex, literally looking down upon the valley settlements. The caste-based separation in Jeddah and the veterans' colonies of Timgad all used zoning and spatial organization to reinforce who held power and who did not. Straight streets and uniform blocks, as in Alexandria or the Roman castrum, did more than facilitate traffic. They created a legible, manageable society where everyone and everything had its assigned place. This premeditated order prevented chaos and streamlined administration, proving that urban design is one of the oldest forms of social engineering. Perhaps the most pragmatic commonality is brilliant environmental adaptation. These cities did not fight their landscapes, they conversed with them. The planners were master listeners, interpreting the language of water, rock, and climate. Machu Picchu's terraces and drainage married the city to the mountain. Angkor's vast reservoir network turned volatile monsoon cycles into agricultural certainty. At Merv and Petra, survival in arid zones began with a hydraulic blueprint, mapping canals before streets. Even Hattusa's fortress plan used the natural rock as its primary defense. This reveals a deep, pre-construction understanding of ecology. The master plan was a survival strategy, a way to harness and amplify the gifts of the local environment while mitigating its dangers. It was sustainable engineering on a civilization scale. Ultimately, these shared characteristics dismantle a persistent myth, the idea that ancient cities were simple, haphazard agglomerations that just grew. What we have traversed is evidence of the opposite, societies capable of breathtaking long-term vision and coordinated execution. A blueprint for Persepolis or the Forbidden City represents a promise made to the future, a debt taken on by one generation to be paid by the next 5. This required more than a clever ruler or a skilled architect. It required a cultural consensus, a shared story so compelling that thousands of people could labor for lifetimes toward a finished city they would never see. The grid, the sacred shape, the aligned axis, these were the vessels for that story. They provided the unchanging framework within which a civilization could unfold. So what does this universal capacity for pre-planning truly tell us? It speaks to a fundamental human impulse, a deep-seated drive to shape chaos into meaningful form. Faced with the randomness of nature, the complexity of growing communities, and the mystery of the stars, our ancestors responded not with resignation, but with design. They reached for the straight edge, the surveyor's line, the celestial observation. They decided that order was not something to be found, but something to be made. These 25 blueprints are more than historical curiosities. They are declarations of intent. They are proof that across time and culture, we have always been builders of worlds, architects of our own destiny, drawing lines in the sand, on parchment, and in the very earth, insisting that here, in this place, meaning will reside. From the rigid grid of Mohenjo-Daro to the cosmic axis of Teotihuacan, these 25 ancient city plans reveal a profound truth. Our ancestors were not just builders, they were master planners, capable of envisioning entire urban landscapes in their mind's eye long before the first foundation stone was ever laid. These designs were far more than practical arrangements for housing and trade. They were profound statements, etched in stone and earth, about humanity's deepest relationships with the cosmos above, with the structures of power, and with the very idea of community itself. They compel us to look at ancient ruins with entirely new eyes, to see them not as the accidental remains of a lost past, but as the executed, physical visions of brilliant, forward-thinking minds. Each city was a deliberate argument about how the world should be organized. As the historian Lewis Mumford once suggested, the city is ultimately a symbol of the possible. It represents the collective aspirations of a society, its highest ideals made tangible. These ancient blueprints are frozen moments of that aspiration, showing us what various cultures in their prime believed was possible, even necessary for a harmonious existence. They challenge our modern assumption that such large-scale, long-term planning is a recent innovation of technology and bureaucracy. It is a human impulse as old as civilization itself. So what do these silent stone maps tell us about our own urban futures? In an age where our cities often feel like chaotic, sprawling organisms, these ancient plans offer a quiet lesson in intentionality. They remind us that the places we inhabit shape our lives in profound ways, influencing how we interact, how we work, and even how we dream. The choice between a grid that fosters connection and a labyrinth that provides privacy, between a city aligned with the stars and one designed for the flow of water, these are not just architectural decisions. They are cultural choices that ripple across generations. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of these master plans is the simple, staggering fact of their completion. They stand as monuments to a kind of faith, the faith that a society can commit to a vision larger than any single lifetime. This invites a final, personal reflection. Which of these ancient designs most astounds you? Is it the hydraulic genius of Angkor, turning a landscape into a clockwork of water and rice? Or the sheer audacity of Sigiriya, a palace engineered onto a sheer rock face? Maybe it is the humble, standardized brick of Mohenjo-Daro, proving that order can be a form of beauty and public health. Each blueprint tells a different story about human ingenuity. If this journey through planned antiquity has sparked your curiosity, consider subscribing for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments below which ancient city's design you find most compelling and why. The conversation about these masterpieces of foresight is, after all, one that continues to this very day.